Hello and welcome to the second of my variety videos and another random selection of visual entertainment. In this video I'll visit a castle and a museum in Wales. But my first location comes from a ruined church, once associated with the black magic. This is the church of St Mary's in Clophill, Bedfordshire. There's been a church on this site since Saxon times. The first vicar was recorded as a man called Robert, priest of Clophill, and his name first appeared in a document back in 1145. This is actually a ruined church. It's built around 1340, but by the 1840s there were structural issues, and combined with the growing congregation, the church became a little too small. Earl de Grey of Rest Park, which is a few miles away, was patron of the church, and the rector, Reverend John Mendham, decided to build a new church in the village around 1848. Once the new church was completed, this church was redundant. The land around it was used for burials, and it still is today. But the story of the church took another turn on the 9th to the 14th of August, 1956. Thieves broke in and stripped the lead off of the roof. This event marked the beginning of the end of this church, because without lead on the roof, water got in and the walls started to decay. And today it's just a ruined church, very well preserved. I've seen many ruined churches around the country, and this one really is in a remarkably good state of preservation. Back in the 1960s, the history of this church took a turn for the worse, because on the 15th of March 1963, in a street just down the road here in Clophill, some local youths were seen playing with a skull by one of the residents. The youths claimed that they had taken it from St Mary's. They discovered it stuck on a spike in one of the broken windows. Now, reports from the newspapers at the time stated that the bones had been dug up from some of the graves, and they were arranged in a pattern which was familiar to those who practice the Black Mass or satanic rituals. The rector of the time reported that 6 graves of females had been tampered with before the stone slabs of a 7th was laid open. The rector at the time, the Reverend Leslie Barker, reported that 6 graves of females had been tampered with before the stone slab of a 7th had been dislodged and the coffin broken into. The coffin belonged to a lady called Jane Humberstone, who had died in the year 1770, aged 22. Her remains were reinterred just a few days later on the 23rd of March. This incident wasn't an isolated one either. Her grave was desiccated on 2 further occasions. And this incident created considerable coverage in the local newspapers and in the national press, which may have contributed to further incidents. It's known that those who practice the black arts always use a female at the centre of all their ceremonies. As to why, I have no idea. I have no knowledge of any of the black arts, but I do find these practices quite interesting and at the same time rather bizarre. The church sadly gained a reputation as the Devil's Church, which I find rather unsettling, considering the 1,000 years of good Christian worship had taken place on this site. But Clophill wasn't the only church associated with the devil's practice, the devil's worship. Other similar incidents occurred around the country in 1963 and 1964, all attributed to the black magic. There were incidents in Lancashire, Bramber in Sussex, and also in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex. Was it black magic, or were these just wanton acts of vandalism? I'll let you decide. But the church is really lovely to walk around, especially on a sunny day like today. The nave of the church, well, there's 2 pieces of grass which show where the pews would have been, and the gravel path marking the central aisle, all the way up here to the bottom of the tower. You can look up and you can see that you can actually access the tower, I think, on occasions. It was renovated back in 2014 by the Clophill Heritage Trust. But it's lovely in here, it really is. You walk up further towards the eastern side of the church. There really are lovely views overlooking the Bedfordshire countryside. It's been really interesting just having a walk around the church, both in the inside and the outside. It's just a shame that the church has had a reputation, but 60 years ago, has time healed the reputation of the church? I'd like to think so. Churches should be a place for peace for the departed, and it really is very peaceful here. You can hear the birds singing, the trees, and nature at its best. Wildflowers, and most of the cemetery reclaimed now to nature. It really is lovely here, and I just hope there are no more satanic incidents at this church or at any other. Churches should be sacred, regardless of whether they're in service, redundant, or like this one, in ruins. What an interesting old church, and such a shame about those darker days back in 1963. It's not the first church that I've come across where the churchyard has been used for unholy activities. But next I visit Someries Castle, an old ruined manor house just outside Luton. But why was it called Someries Castle? Well, let's find out. The name Someries Castle comes from William de Someries, who previously owned a residence on this location. But it's not actually a castle, it's actually sort of a fortified manor house. Building work started around the year 1430 by Sir John Wenlock, and it's one of the first brick-built buildings in the country. It's just a ruin today, and there's not much here. But what does remain is the chapel and the gatehouse, and this is the remains of the chapel. You see there's a squint on the side, hagioscope, where those from outside the family could have watched the proceedings here in the chapel, standing at the eastern end. There's a very nice piscina just on my left, and above me is where the east window would have been, and a couple of statues probably up there as well. Now, St John Wenlock was an interesting person. He was a soldier, a statesman, and Knight of the Garter. You served as a Member of Parliament, Speaker of the House of Commons, and High Sheriff of both Bedfordshire and Buckinghamshire. He even fought on both sides during the Wars of the Roses. So there was a man looking after his own interests, perhaps by trying to get a better deal for himself, by backing both sides. But he wasn't the only person to back both sides either. Many people did. It's rather noisy here as well. There's a farmer's tractor in the field, and of course we're next to the runway of Luton Airport. Sir John Wenlock died at the Battle of Tewkesbury on the 4th of May 1471, fighting for the Lancastrians against the Yorkists. And it's rumoured that he was actually killed by his own commander, the Duke of Somerset, although that was never proved. After he died, the house later passed to Thomas Rotherham, Bishop of Lincoln, and later Bishop of York, and his wife, a lady called Alice Welsford. And also King James I visited Someries back in 1605, when the castle was owned by one of his descendants of the Rotherham family. But I've walked out of the chapel and into the gatehouse area, and there's just not much here. There's a few windows, some very nice brickwork, and the main doorway here to the gatehouse. As I walk through the doorway, there's cows in the field, and behind you can see the runway of Luton Airport. But it's quite a sizable property. We know the castle in 1606 had 25 rooms, and in 1671 the hearth tax, because hearths were taxed back then, 23 of them to keep the place warm. But it must have been nice here when it was first built. I'm sure Sir John Wenlock had good purpose and good meaning for building a property here, and it certainly would have been a nice location back in the 1450s. Not now, of course. It would have been next to the runway at Luton Airport. Assuming, of course, they would have got planning permission from the Lords of the Manor here to put a runway in their back garden. But it is nice here. It's very, very rural, and there's a nice smell in the air from the cows. Yes, I did see one earlier relieving himself. The castle was never finished, and it was largely pulled down in 1742, and this was all that remains, presumably kept as a folly for the nearby Luton Hoo. And all that remains is this gatehouse, which dates from about 1448, and the chapel from the 1460s. It's also claimed the castle is haunted by the ghost of Sir John Wenlock. Haven't seen him yet, but let's just walk through this archway here and out to the fields. It's quite a nice little ruin. I've enjoyed walking around. There's not much to see here, but it is nice to see what remains, particularly the brickwork, which I find rather pleasing. It's really nice. So there we are, Someries Castle, just outside Luton. There wasn't too much to see there, but the locals were friendly, as you saw. Oh, my final selection in this video takes me to Swansea and to a museum that I've been itching to visit for many years. One aspect of visiting a regional museum is that you never know just what you will find on display. and there are a few items that surprised me, as you'll see. It really is incredible to see what they've got on display in here. The old steam engine and that Mercedes-Benz car, first registered in Wales in 1904. Just to think, in 2002, it was travelling from London to Brighton in the annual old car rally. Absolutely incredible for a vehicle of that age to make that sort of journey nearly 100 years after it was made. What a fantastic museum, so much in here, and I'm so pleased that I came. Absolutely incredible. Superb museum. They had so many other galleries in there as well, up on the first floor and out the back overlooking the marina. Absolutely just fascinating to see what they had on display. But it was the engineering gallery that brought me to this museum, and I'm so pleased I visited. They have so much on display, and even in the entrance area they had an old car, a 1923 American Dodge. Absolutely lovely to see that. I did notice the tax disc in the window, and it read 2002. So 22 years ago, that vehicle was still on the road. I don't make cars to last these days, but they certainly did back in 1923. Absolutely brilliant. I'm so pleased that I visited that museum. I always enjoy visiting Swansea, and I've made 5 videos from the city in recent years. Thank you so much for watching, and there are several other compilation videos on my channel, especially for members. There'll be another one along in a few weeks' time, so please consider subscribing to my channel to see more of these variety style videos. Thank you for watching.